We're running into new GLP-1 medications every week by the looks of it, which makes sense. There's a whole bunch being investigated, and once in a while, one of them will start to show some real potential. Retatrutide has done just that. I've seen the name appear a little bit here and there, and I decided to take a look into it. It's a pretty interesting GLP-1 because it works in not one, not two, but 3 different ways to give its results, which means it could be quite effective. But we can't say that for sure just yet. It's also not yet approved for use anywhere because it's still going through some trials. But I wanted to do a bit of digging, find out how exactly it works, what these trials are finding, so that we can all stay up to date on these GLP-1s. So let's go. So Retatrutide is another once-weekly injection, and it is actually being developed by Eli Lilly, which are the same people who make Mounjaro. The interesting thing about Retatrutide is that it is a triple agonist, meaning it actually targets 3 different receptors at once: the GLP-1 receptor, the GIP receptors, and the glucagon receptors. Now, how does this compare to the others? Well, Ozempic and Wegovy, they only target the GLP-1 receptors. And then we have Mounjaro and Zepbound, which came along and started targeting the GLP-1 receptors, but also the GIP receptors, which ended up making them a little bit more effective. And so I've gone through this a few times, but by acting on GLP-1 receptors, these medications, they increase the amount of insulin that is released. They slow down the rate that your stomach empties itself, and they also send signals to the brain that you are still feeling full, which reduces your appetite. Now, GIP is another hormone quite similar to GLP-1. It also increases insulin release and suppresses appetite by sending signals to the brain. And so Mounjaro and Zepbound, they act on both of these receptors, which means there are more ways to get their effects. And now here comes Retatrutide working on not only the GLP-1 and GIP receptors, but also the glucagon receptors. Now, these glucagon receptors are mainly found in the liver, but elsewhere too. And when they are switched on, it pushes the body into energy usage mode. So glucagon leads to glycogen breakdown, which means it breaks down the storage forms of glucose to give you energy. But more importantly, by activating these glucagon receptors, you increase fat oxidation, which is when you break down fat to give you energy instead of using glucose. You may be thinking, breaking down stored glucose will increase blood sugar, which is the opposite of what we need and what these medications are aiming to do. That is true. But also remember that Retatrutide also hits your GLP-1 and GIP receptors, and these two will counteract any blood sugar increases. The glucagon receptors here are being used for the push towards fat oxidation, which means you get more fat loss while having controlled blood sugar levels. And you also get the appetite benefits of GLP-1 and GIP. You're sort of tricking the body into thinking it needs to burn fat to produce energy. So that's how Retatrutide is meant to work, and the effects that it is meant to give are a theory, and it is what the trials are trying to prove. And we're going to find out what these trials have found right now. The interesting news is that some trials have already been completed and they are seeing pretty decent results. So there has been a phase 2 trial with 338 adults. Now, phase 2 trials are done to show that the medication is actually effective for a certain condition. And so in this phase 2 trial, they wanted to show that Retatrutide works for weight loss in people that have obesity. Now, the next phase, phase 3, will need to show that not only is it effective for this, but it is also safe as well. So these participants had obesity, but they had no diabetes, and they were split into different groups to use either a placebo or different doses of Retatrutide. 1 milligram, 4 milligrams, 8 milligrams, or 12 milligrams. Now, they used these for 48 weeks, and what the trial found was that there was a clear dose response, meaning that the higher the dose, the more weight was lost. Now, the highest dose of 12 milligrams once a week saw participants losing an average of about 24% of their body weight, while the lowest dose saw an average of 7.2%, which even that is pretty good. Now, at the highest dose, the 12 milligrams, about 90% of people achieved at least a 5% weight loss, which means a lot of people are responding to it. And 5% is enough weight loss to give health benefits in other areas like blood pressure as well. Now, while this study did focus on weight loss as the main outcome to look at, they did also look at some other health measures. And this is important because weight loss is much more than numbers on the scales. It comes with a lot of other benefits to health too. And so this trial found that waist circumference, blood pressure, blood sugar, and some blood lipid measures also improved. And I want to focus on the waist circumference changes in particular because it's a really good signal for the amount of visceral fat that someone has. Now, this is the fat that accumulates around your organs, and it doesn't just store fat for energy, it's actually inflammatory. It sends fatty acids to the liver. It can lead to insulin resistance and also higher blood pressure. Basically, this visceral fat can have some harmful effects on your overall health. And looking at waist circumference is a lot better, in my opinion, than just looking at BMI or weight change. Because BMI doesn't tell us whether muscle or fat was lost. But waist circumference can give us an indication of whether fat is being lost, and more importantly, whether visceral fat is being lost, which can lead to improvements in blood sugars, lipids, and blood pressure, those benefits beyond the scale that I just mentioned. So this trial, it found that retatrutide after 48 weeks led to waist circumference reductions between 6.5 centimeters and 19.6 centimeters. Now, that seems like a pretty big range, but that's because as the dose of the medication went up, so did the amount of waist circumference lost. Now, these are good results, and they also may explain why we see improvements to blood sugar and blood pressure with this medication as well. And also with the other GLP-1s, because weight loss does have many downstream effects for health. Now, for context, studies of Mounjaro or Zepbound found that it takes about 72 weeks to get a waist circumference reduction between 18 to 22 centimeters. And studies on Ozempic have found that waist circumference can reduce by up to 13 centimeters. So what we're seeing here is that retatrutide, giving these results at just 48 weeks, is promising, if anything. But we will, of course, need actual studies comparing them all for the best comparison. Now, I will say that this trial did not look into muscle mass, so we don't know yet how much of the weight loss was muscle mass. And that is important to know because a concern with these GLP-1 medications is the loss of muscle, which we definitely do not want, especially in older adults. This can be reduced with lifestyle changes like nutrition and exercise, but that is another video. It's just important to know where the weight loss is coming from. Now, I suspect there will be more studies coming. Like I said, the phase 3 studies are next. And this will give us important safety information because just like other GLP-1s, nausea was the most common side effect that participants experience. The good news is that there are multiple phase 3 trials going on at the moment for retatrutide. And these are actually called the Triumph studies. There's 4 of them, and they're looking into the use of the medication in people with quite a few different conditions. There's one looking at obesity, there's one looking at type 2 diabetes, one about cardiovascular disease, and one with participants having knee osteoarthritis. So these studies will give us information about whether retatrutide is safe and effective for use in people with these conditions. There's also a head-to-head comparison study with tirzepatide, which is the medication in Mounjaro and Zepbound. So we'll be able to see how it compares to that. Like I said, there's a lot in the pipeline, and this is just one new GLP-1. There's a lot going on here, and it's honestly hard to keep up, but I am doing my best. But anyway, I hope this helps explain what's going on, and if you run into anything regarding retatrutide, you now have an idea of what it is and where it's at. I think 2026 will be the year that we see a bit more of it when the results of these phase 3 trials come out. In the meantime though, if you do see anyone selling it, do not get it because it's not approved yet. If you have any questions or anything you would like to see a video about, let me know in the comments. I'll see you in the next video, and until then, keep playing the long game.